really difficult to live up to the hype. You build it up for a long period of time. Everyone gets really excited. The previews look amazing, and you're ready to go. And then it just falls flat. And what I'm obviously talking about is this new player bot feature that the Ravens just rolled out. Just tried it twice on the analytics channel, and it says failing. It says application did not respond. So I don't know what you're doing, Ravens, but you got to get this stuff together. Can't be rolling out stuff that's only half baked. Speaking of things that rolled out this last week, we had week 1 of the new season. It lasted, 4 of the last 5 days or 3 of the last 4 days? I don't know. I've lost track of how many days of football we had in a row there. RJ, what day is it? Do you know where we are right now?
No clue. It is sometime period during the NFL season, but that's all I know.
And that's all we need to know, really. But nonetheless, we are post week 1. We have our first doubleheader in the books. A lot of surprising results, a lot of fun results. So we're going to do what everyone's doing this week. It's, kind of reels or Memorex, overreaction, underreaction, and, just talking about the fun surprises that greeted us in this new football season. So we'll kind of go through some of the results. Won't necessarily go score by score, but we'll spend some time on some of the matchups that really jumped out and really speak to us. For example, kind of starting with the AFC East. Last minute decision by the Patriots to really throw their hat in the ring for the division title. But really 2 really close games in the division. You had Buffalo and Miami coming down to the wire. About a 14-point win for Buffalo. Both those teams kind of looking towards the future. And then you've got Patriots and Jets, probably the game of the week, I'd say for sure, where Jets ends up pulling it out by less than a point, 226.22 to 225.53. Trying to look here, was there something that happened during Monday night that might have swung that a little bit, or is it pretty much there after the games on Sunday? Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, DeAndre Swift, that's what it was. So that's right. Patriots was saying that Swift gave enough points for him to lose in another league, but came up just about a point short of him winning in this league. So definitely a tough showing. But after that, you got the Jets at 2-0. You got the Pats and Bills at 1-1, and you've got Miami at 0-2. Probably where we expected things to end up. Any major surprises on your end there, RJ?
No major surprises. Glad to see the Patriots point total for this week is respectable. It was nice to see him jump into the race last second, and let's hope he can make it a competitive division.
Yeah, he's a game behind, and he'll get the Jets again. So every possibility that is even more competitive as some of his players have a chance to grow into some roles. And he still has some capital to go buy some things. So then moving to the AFC North, you had Cincinnati and Cleveland go 2-0. Pittsburgh and the sorting on my scoreboard is just all over the place. Sorry, guys. Cincy went 2-0. Cleveland went 2-0. And Pittsburgh and Baltimore went 0-2. Shame on Baltimore for not getting over 200 points. I feel like that's a staple in the AFC North that truly he's brought shame upon the house there.
Yeah. A couple of lackluster performances from some of his pass catchers as a whole. Darnold putting up less than 8 points wasn't ideal. I'm sure he'll bounce back, but it doesn't feel good to start the year off this way.
No, agree. And it's just tough to be the Steelers starting out 0-2, even though you score more points than every other team in the AFC South. Definitely. He's doing the yeoman's work there, continuing to soldier on and continuing to push to compete despite how things are starting out there. But, it's tough work being in the North.
Yeah, yeah, it's rough for Steelers. I mean, I hope he's optimistic. His team looks really good, and he's had some unexpected players show out already. So I definitely think he has a good team, and I hope he keeps it together.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, kind of looking for teams to trade with, because the original fearless leader Lewis was the Steelers, so his team always shows up at the top of the list. And anytime I'm looking at trades, I look through the Steelers, and he's always pretty well set up. It's just a matter of being just a piece or two short, and it's tough to do so when you're sort of strong across the board like he is. So tough break, but that's the division you're in. Don't worry, you'll pick up some easy wins against the NFC North when we come to town, but that's later in the season. You mentioned the South. We'll just hit those real fast. Jacksonville picking up 2 wins, Indy picking up 2 losses, and both Tennessee and Houston going 1-1. But Jacksonville getting that all important 30-point win over Houston. They seem to be the team to beat in the South, and Jacksonville's jumped out to the early lead here.
Yep. Oh, great. Like Jacksonville looks good. Like got good performances out of a lot of players. All of the offensive pieces produced as expected, especially the running backs and the quarterback. And that's his bread and butter for his team. So yeah, it's nice to see. Houston, I think this was just a case of like a lack of depth was kind of the emphasis on this. Like he got to 184, so it's a respectable point total, but he just didn't have depth enough to, get some of those single-digit scores onto the bench.
Yeah, I mean, and the defense is a tough thing for him, and it was identified early in the offseason. Is from an offensive perspective, especially now with Bill Merritt having a pretty great week one. It's tough to beat Kyler, Bill Merritt, Gibbs, Chase, Tillman, Devonta Smith. Kind of his offense is pretty well stacked. Although Smith did have a tough week one, it wasn't just AJ Brown that really struggled to get points there. But the defense, he only had his D tackles and Jonathan Cooper in double digits. Less than 5 points from his corners, less than 10 points from his linebackers. That's not going to get it done for you.
Yep. One of those things. Worst possible scenarios happened to his 2 most productive linebackers from last year. Both of them found new teams later in the offseason. Hopefully, once they get up to speed with their new teams, they'll do a little bit better. But unfortunately, that's one of those that, in this league, you have to pivot when things like that happen. And if you don't react in a timely manner, your linebacker one gives you 7.2 points.
Yeah, this is true. Then moving to the West, Kansas City starting 2-0. Denver starting 0-2. Raiders and Chargers going 1-1, with the Chargers picking up the big one over the Raiders. But neither have their first round picks next year. Chargers is really sort of building more of a team on the rise versus one expected to commit or sort of compete too much this year. Raiders definitely depending on some pretty big stars to carry the load. And I know Detroit as a whole struggled in week one, but didn't really get the contribution he needed across the board there. So again, still everything's within reach, but losing a tiebreak. Well, he didn't play Kansas City yet. I guess he has Kansas City this week, so it could have gone worse. But dropping a game to the Chargers for tiebreaker purposes is tough. Kind of makes the Kansas City game a must-win this year, this week, if he's going to try and maintain a shot at the playoffs.
Yeah. As far as the Raiders, 162 points. That is concerning. I mean, like, you got 31 points out of your running back, so he might need to. He might need to be one of those buyers, especially on. Man, I don't know. It's a lot of players that just underperformed. Like, but he does need to address running back if he wants to be competitive in that. You mentioned Chargers. I like Chargers. I like what they've done. I just imagine like 181 points. Just what if he had Rashee Rice? Like he
Well, I
could
mean, that's
probably
the thing is if he had, I know I will admit I was obviously one of the teams knocking at the door to turn Rasheed Rice into a productive player right now.
for
But
sure.
if he had made that move, um, what happens? I mean, he lost to Kansas City by about 30 points. Yeah, not saying that was all because he didn't want to move Rasheed Rice, and frankly, that might be the better move
Yeah.
long term for what he's thinking.
Yep.
But this has got to have him walking away saying, do I really want to slow roll this the way that I have? Or maybe, just maybe, am I willing to put a little bit of gas on the fire here?
Yeah, for sure. I look at it and I see the point total, and it's just it's one of those things. He has something to look forward to. So his team is better than the point total that it put up, and that's something to be proud of. Does he have anything to go by? He doesn't really have draft picks to go buy anything. So yeah, he just has to be patient. When Rice comes back, hopefully he can regain some footing in the division.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, Worthy going down only serves to help that. Not sure how long he's going to be out, whether we'll even know. But every week that Worthy doesn't establish that rapport with Mahomes means that when Rice comes back, that's still his number one job to lose. And frankly, that just makes it even more and more valuable. So he doesn't seem to be in a rush. So he's doing what he wants to be doing. But basically, that means for the AFC, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams at 2-0. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams at 1-1, and I think that means 5 teams at 0-2. Really, I mean, the Colts, the Dolphins, and Broncos wanted to be 0-2. Steelers and Ravens probably assumed they were going to be there, but still planning to fight on. Yeah, I mean, not a bunch of big surprises, but I think it's setting up for some fun results as Patriots and Raiders and Chargers and the AFC North move further into their schedule. What does that mean in terms of those teams that have taken losses, and can the teams that either expectedly or unexpectedly find themselves in some premium positions can hold on to it? Any other thoughts on the AFC before we jump over to the NFC?
The lowest scoring teams in the AFC are shocking when you compare them to the NFC teams.
Well, I mean,
Not just Bills, but like hats off to Bill, 17.3 points. That's a stellar point total. But like Colts, Titans, I know they're all tanking. Dolphins, and then like what's the lowest one in the NFC? 163 points.
it's a tough start for Bill. I think he has aspirations of keeping his score in the double digits. To put up 17 in the first week when we've got 12 weeks of this doesn't bode well for that long term. It's going to really force him to push hard on the bye week trades to get zeros out of his kicker and punter if he wants to try and make that goal a reality. But it's 17.3 again is impressive for a team trying to not score, but still a little bit high for the goals he has in mind. All right, so let's move over to the NFC. Um, we will go ahead and start with the East here. Um, Giants beating Dallas, but losing to Washington by just under three. Again, had the other New York game not been so close, probably the game of the week. In terms of the overall divisional and conference implications, it may have larger implications than the AFC East score, but again, right in that 220s range, showing that if you want to win your week, kind of get above 250. You had a tough break against Dallas, losing by about four. So at the end of the week, you got Washington at 2-0. You've got the Giants and Dallas at 1-1, and you're sitting there at 0-2. I mean, granted, probably the closest division in terms of score outside of the AFC North. Obviously, the Browns and the Bengals really with the class in terms of the overall score, but in terms of competitiveness and chance of winning the game, all four of you were really neck and neck the entire way through.
Yeah, it's fun to be in this division, I guess.
Yeah, I guess is really believable.
Yeah, I'm happy with my points. Everybody, like every team in the division, did well this week. I think all of us could point at a couple of different things and say that we would have liked to have gotten more points out of certain positions. Yeah, this is just week one. As far as being in this division, I don't think anybody. I'm not panicking at 0-2. I don't think Commanders is crowning themselves the winner of the division yet. So it's going to be a long season.
I don't think you were in chat this morning, if that's what you're saying.
Oh, I was not. Why did that actually happen?
There were some quality memes exchanged back and forth between the Commanders and Giants on things. So, not necessarily crowning himself, but most certainly quite proud of the results of his little digital guys and their show on the field they put on over the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great showing.
Yep. All right, we'll shift over to the NFC North. Probably no surprise to most. I go 0-2 against Packers and Detroit. Detroit beats both me and Chicago. Chicago goes down to Detroit, but is able to beat the Packers. So you've got Detroit at 2-0. You've got the Packers and the Bears at 1-1, and you've got me at 0-2. So definitely another one of those tightly fought divisions. Not quite as close as the NFC East, but the low score at 163 in the division. So again, to your point, the low score in the AFC East was 141 for Miami. For us, it's 163. For the East, it was where are you on here? 189. Obviously, the Colts and the Broncos are trying to get a little bit lower there too, but you can tell that the teams that are still at least trying to give it a run here before they completely tank it up, or maybe those of us who just don't think that we have the chops to catch up to the Bills and the Colts of the world. It's always confusing that I call it the Bills, even though it's Bills team, not the actual Buffalo Bills. But
yeah,
sorry for those who that confuses. I'm, flawed as a podcast host. But anyways, despite my flaws and my 0-2 start, what are your thoughts about the NFC North?
Same thing with the NFC East. Everybody's trying to do something. So everybody can point to positives. Even you can point to a long list of like positive things going for especially your offense. A couple of trades, a little bit of retooling on defense, and you're right back in there with Lions. Like a 60-point increase isn't some wild and crazy thing. So I expect this to be just as competitive.
Yeah, I think Tet definitely left a couple things on the field. It was encouraging to see the amount of usage Hunter was getting in the Jacksonville offense, and a couple of nice things at the back end of my defense, but definitely some things that I have to retool there, and some things I probably can't count on being sources of points long term. But um, you know, not a bad way to start things out. I will give Bears the triumvirate of myself, Packers, and Chicago. Jeremy said he was doing some scoreboard watching on Monday night, and there was a point where I guess both Bears and I had the lead on him. Um, Aaron Jones, unfortunately, though, was able to, and Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. It's interesting to see a Packers fan with so many important Vikings on his team. Um, but the three of them really benefited from the JJ McCarthy wake up call that happened in the fourth quarter of the game last night. I think that really pulled him from an 0-2 start to a at least 1-1 start. And I'll tell you, if things had maybe one or two catches gone differently, he probably could have started out 2-0 as well. But good on the Bears for picking up the win, and it's something to build on for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know. Let's hope these primetime games stay just as enjoyable as the first two.
Well, I mean, that's where I got the idea of the flipping the script title of the episode here, because so everyone likes to joke about the NFL being rigged. Hey, we're simple people. This is the stuff that we joke about. But the fact that you have back-to-back primetime games of one team having basically control of the game over the other, and then all of a sudden, come the fourth quarter, the other quarterback comes alive and completely flips the script, and in a probable comeback where the other team that was a shell of itself for the better part of the game wins by a field goal or less. It's kind of a familiar script. So we'll see what the NFL has for us next week. But it would be appreciated if, I don't think it's 4 primetime games next week. I think it's only 3. If 2 of them aren't sharing the exact same script, like let's vary it up a little bit here. We don't need just comedies or action movies. Like you gotta get a couple of different categories covered here for the Oscars that are the NFL.
That's fair.
All right, so we'll keep it moving here, going over to the NFC South. Carolina jumping out to a dominant 2-0 lead on the division. Once again, talking about a division that not a lot of space between teams. Low score in this division, 171, as the Buccaneers as they go 0-2. But Atlanta picks up a win over New Orleans. New Orleans picks up a win over Tampa. And Atlanta obviously goes down to Carolina. So Carolina at 2-0, Atlanta and Saints at 1-1, and Tampa, I think defending champion right now, if I am not mistaken. Oh no, I'm sorry, Bengals I think is defending champion, but defending I believe NFC champion Buccaneers, starting out 0-2. So rebuilding around, I believe he's a Titans fan. His team's quarterback, a little bit rough to start, but as are most rookie quarterback starting points, but only losing by about 4 to the Saints, and about he didn't get the second loss to the Falcons. It was Cardinals that beat him for the second loss, but it's a great start for Cardinals. Some important wins he's picking up there, and nice to have the game lead on the division.
Yes. You said Cardinals?
Oh, sorry. So it's Carolina, obviously.
Yeah.
CAR. These things happen.
Yeah. Okay. I got thrown off by that. No, we're good. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna say this with every NFC division, but really competitive. Bucks, unfortunately, some amount of Cam Ward's first start and not having Jordan Addison ultimately led to him being 0-2. No, no real critiques other than that. Like his team's good, just wasn't his week, and he needs Addison back, and he needs Ward to be productive. But other than that, he's built to be competitive. I don't know if Saints was trying to pick up wins. If he is, good for him. First one.
So I think, and this doesn't seem to be the approach he's taking, but last year I talked about, hey, if you get the value baked in for your pick when you trade it, it's not necessarily a bad thing trading it early. So I don't think he has control of his first for next year. So it's not that he's trying to lose, but I think he's very open to what the market is willing to give him in terms of not necessarily trying to win either. So it's one of those, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up landing, because I feel like we've got about 4 or 5 of those teams in the NFC right now, where it's they know they're not ready to win yet, but they're definitely not tanking. And in a lot of cases, they don't have control over their first. Like the Bears come to mind as well. I have control over my first, but I probably fall in that category. I think you may be there as well. At least at the moment, we'll see how some of the things start to come to fruition on your team. But there seem to be quite a lot of us in that sort of 160 to 190 point range in the NFC. Many of us without control of our firsts, and that could end up being late 10s, early teens in terms of picks.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But yeah, I am this many years old or minutes old or however you want to say it in the podcast when I realized that I was the low scorer in the NFC this week, which is not what I expected when I was looking at results right now. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a negative towards you. I think that's just a pat on the back for everybody in the NFC and giving it an honest shot. And I think that's why some of like the points are so spread around, like why a lot of us have deficiencies in some positions. And sure, after a few weeks some people will bow out and try to move other things, but as a whole, I think we did a good job of all of us giving ourselves a decent shot at competing this year, and that's overall just fun to be in that type of a conference.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more fun to have this bit of a tussle for now. And like I said, a lot of the teams that are in this mix don't have controls of their first, so it doesn't really benefit like going full tank. And like for me to go full tank means I've got to try and get points from rookies like Genty or Hunter or Tet or others off my team, where hey, that doesn't really benefit me in the long run to convert those back into picks when I probably paid a pretty handsome price in picks to go get those guys. So it's one of those where the score like this probably isn't going away. Now, is that going to turn into more challenge for some of the top teams in the NFC? We'll see. But it does lead to results like we saw in the NFC West this week, where the Cardinals probably picked to finish third or fourth in the division, starting out 2-0. How do you get there? Because some of those guys were a little bit ahead of schedule on him. 25 points from Caleb, almost 25 points from Emeka. Etienne rising to the top in terms of the three-headed backfield that we all thought we were going to see in Jacksonville. Now, obviously, thanks to trades as a two-head. Laporta picking up solid points and a good showing from the defense. So pieces where we said someone's going to have to step up if he's going to do something. And it could be interesting because he could be ahead of schedule, picking up wins against the Niners and especially the Rams. He's got a very interesting decision to make this week because he's got the Seahawks. And, I mean, look, as things go right now, he's probably a 80-20 underdog. If he's able to sneak one out here, he's in a very good position to, not even win the division, but make the playoffs with starting out with 3 wins that way, considering how the rest of that schedule unfolds. So, um, those of us like the East and the North are playing each other, so that's going to be a bit of a bloodbath. So, some teams here at the beginning with some really tough decisions to make, and the Cardinals have all of his picks for this upcoming year and the following year, so he has ammo to get it done. Plus, Quinshon Judkins is a 0 this week, and other pieces that he can pivot off of. So, again, it's just really exciting to see teams like this where you built it this way, and it looks like you might be a little ahead of schedule.
Yeah, it's interesting how we weren't necessarily down on his team, but you put a respectable point total against like next to ETN, and then like a couple of respectable point totals against some guys that we don't necessarily expect, a Marshawn Nealand, and like this team actually looks really good. Are they going to be competing for a championship? I wouldn't be quick to say that, but definitely a playoff-worthy team, like that has some respectable players at every position. So definitely like how Cardinals looks right now. Seahawks, overabundance of production. We knew that going into it. So this is no surprise being at 285. I am a little, I'm shocked that Rams went 0-2 with 200 points. Hope he can find a wide receiver, but I think a lot of us feel that same way. Other than that, his team looks solid.
Yeah, it's definitely a question of, and we'll talk about this as we go through overreaction or underreactions for the teams. He may need to try and move a position of depth for something else, but it's a question of what can you do with it and what's really for sale in doing that. But kind of wrapping up the NFC here. So you've got, looking at it in summary, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2-0 teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the same makeup, 5 2-0 teams. Looks like 6 1-1 teams and 5 0-2 teams in the NFC. But I'd say, except maybe for 49ers, all of the 0-2 teams are slightly surprising to me. And again, the 49ers just traded their first to pick up Justin Fields. So that's not a team that's necessarily trying to be bad. So even though you have the same distribution of records, the NFC just feels more like it's going to be a tougher, tighter division this year. Because 163 being the low score, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams scored really in that 180 to 160 range. And then if you extend that to say 200, you pick up really 2 or 3 more teams. So it's just going to be a killing field. And there's going to be weeks that teams like mine can pop for 220 or 230 and pick up some wins. And there's going to be weeks that if you don't show up like the Rams, you're going to get beat at 200.
Yep.
All right. So, might as well, if we're going to start with over or underreaction, the Rams are a great place to start. So, started 0-2, has 2 quarterbacks, has 3 startable running backs. Despite Kendrick Bourne just getting signed by the 49ers, doesn't really have a wide receiver to speak of. And defense has some bright spots, but could use some work. So if you're the Rams right now, obviously you'd like to trade something for a wide receiver. But kind of the question here is you're 0-2. You got a lot of pieces that may not age well. Are you trying to stay in it and flip one of your depth pieces like quarterback or running back for pieces to help you pick up a couple more wins down the line here? Or are you seeing what you can kind of trade back while maintaining, some pole position here? Like maybe it's Matt Stafford gets moved, or Geno Smith gets moved, or McCaffrey gets sold high for his performance and his distinct position of being the only player in San Francisco not to be injured right now. Defense is a popular thing. It's, if Rams wanted to pivot, he probably could and still stay in the, triple digits in terms of scoring. But also gets a receiver or two, and this is a much different team.
Yeah. I don't think it's a terrible idea to kind of see what you can get for CMC right now. Touched the ball 31 times, and he came out healthy. That's an important thing. So everybody that is a fan of his unique production probably is a little bit at ease now after that workload. So I definitely think that that's not an unreasonable thing to capitalize on. I don't know who doesn't have a quarterback that actually wants to compete. So I do question the market for that.
Yeah, it's the challenge of the no trade back rule here, because with Cam Miller, I'm probably the most likely team to trade for Geno, but I traded him Geno, so I'm probably not able to really trade back for him unless Geno goes to somebody else. So it makes it a little bit tough sometimes, where it's like the right person for me to trade for, because situation and circumstances have changed, is the team that traded him to me. So, like I said, I guess one of the things I'll have to talk to Jeremy about now that I'm co-commish is if there is a way to revisit this that, again, honors the spirit of things, but doesn't necessarily lock people in. But at the same time, we want to make sure we keep things simple for ourselves as commissioners, because everyone wants things done fast, but we want to make sure we're doing things right.
Yeah. What does Rams have as far as draft assets? He has a second round pick next year. I don't know. I think it's more of if he stays patient, I'm sure that there will be some wide receivers come available, but that's probably the biggest thing right now.
Well, again, I feel like, and maybe I'm being counterintuitive and always leaning towards trades, but I think what you can trade something for is going to change drastically in the next 3 weeks. Because right now, there's enough teams in the NFC, with it being such a tight race so far. I mean, we're a week into it, so shockingly, it's a tight race still. But I'd say there's no team that's really trying to not win this year in the NFC. So trading a piece that is maybe win now, or at least not all in, or deadline buy type piece, that's still an attractive trade asset right now, where in 3 weeks, when things kind of separate and teams rise and fall as they tend to, you might not be able to do that. So, not just worth checking what's out there, but the ability to make that trade might disappear in 2 weeks.
Yep, that is very true.
Yeah, but I mean, it's an interesting question for the 3 NFC teams that aren't the Seahawks of, do you continue to add to pick up some more games this year, or do you let it ride with what you've got and just kind of say, hey, we're all kind of in that, around 200-point range in terms of what we can score. Let's see how things kind of shake out. We've all kind of, except for the Cardinals, tossed in kind of what we're trying to do. See how it falls out instead of trying to take a step in front of another team. All right. Back to overreactions. Should Tampa be overreacting to an 0-2 start in the South?
Yes. Burn it down. Start over.
He traded for the second overall pick this year to get his quarterback, who put up 2 points. And the little bit of the Tennessee game I could watch, I mean, that was an ugly win by Denver. A lot of poor execution, a lot of, I'd say, hubris in terms of some of the play calls. And, really let Tennessee hang around in a game that they had no business hanging around in.
Yeah. I mean, it'll get better. Like, it'll definitely get better compared to a 1.68 points. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, it still has the two running backs scoring in double digits. Sutton doing well. Pearsall having a nice 45-yard catch near the end to bail things out there and almost bring them all the way back. Walker, surprisingly, 10 rushes for 20 yards, only picking up less than 5 points. I was definitely, as a Walker owner in some other leagues, surprised by that stat line. But
I think Charbonnet was the more valuable of the two, right?
At least in this week, yeah. But it's not. It was one of those where,
Yeah.
like, if you look at the different timeshares, like Breece Hall was far and away the bell cow in the Jets backfield this week. If you look at Etienne, he was far and away the bell cow in the Jags backfield this week. But Charbonnet versus Walker, I think in terms of snaps, was like 26 to 25. So it was like dead on in terms of almost 50-50 timeshare. So it's some of those are saying, oh, yeah, we're going to be a three-headed or all three backs are going to see time and thinking that there might be some balance there. It's looking like a couple of guys are rising to the top. This one, it looks like, well, it's a good thing that this is best ball because Bucks is going to have a hard time on a week-to-week basis if they're going to get 50-50 snap share for who's going to be the one that breaks. Let's see. And yeah, to your point about the Saints, Dak, it's interesting, just under 12 points, but his performance in that game on Thursday felt better than his stat line. 21 for 34, 188. A lot of drop balls in the process, but really thought Dak had a better game than the 12 points he had there. So I think better things are coming there. Kamir Dyke, picking up 11.2. I think primarily that's special teams helping out. Wan'Dale Robinson continuing his high target, low yardage usage, and then really the Saints defense popping nicely. So to your point, Saints just seems like a team that is trying to sell, but still has a lot of assets, especially on the defensive side. So it's a question of, is it, he's asking for too much and not getting it, or are people not even asking because they don't know what to send him? They don't know what he's doing.
It's the frustrating market that is finding a starting running back or one that you could start in this league, because there aren't many of them, and whoever has them is not trading them right now.
Or, so I think, wants value for them.
Right. I think that is, whether it be wide receiver or running back, I think that's what a lot of these, including myself, these 180-point teams, that's what they're struggling with, is finding just that one or like the two mediocre pieces that actually like make them comfortable at the position that they're in need of. And with the Saints, like a lot of other teams, it's running back, because you just don't have very many of them that are productive week in and week out. There were only 28 that scored more than 10 points.
No, I think you're dead on. So if Saints picks up that running back, that helps a lot. And what a lot of people are looking for in return, like, again, we just talked about the Rams. Like, he'd really like to get a receiver back for a back. I don't know if Wan'Dale Robinson scratches the itch he's really looking for there. So it'll be, I always hope for trades, because trades make this podcast more fun to talk through. But Saints could be one of those teams that starts finding a lot of partners after this week. There are a lot of teams that are looking for defense right now. Roquan Smith and Ernest Jones having pretty great showings. Very attractive pieces to add. Malcolm Kuhn's picking up a sack. Again, being across from Max Crosby, he's going to be a good piece. James Houston's a name that's popped out in the league ever since his 8-sack rookie season. Was mentioned a couple times, I think, during the Thursday night broadcast. Again, there are some pieces here that Saints could still be selling, or Saints is building off these things if he gets one or two things that he can buy. So again, it's the masochistic nature of what we're doing here. Go ahead and move to the AFC. Let's come up with a couple here. Definitely a little bit more separation between the haves and has-nots. You have the Titans at 116, Colts for 63, Broncos at 17 points. Yeah, 17.3. So 3 teams that were very much trying not to score points and showing as much. Miami can't help it, 141. So some of these guys, especially Tennessee and Miami, have some more selling to do to keeping these points off their team. But it's tough to do when you've got Penix putting up 25 and Trevion giving you almost 13. Juwan Johnson, I think, was a free agent bid and is now one of the hot tight ends here. With, I guess, Taysom Hill being out for a while. I guess, if you need a tight end, this is where you got to go, right?
Yeah. I mean, Juwan Johnson is definitely the best at having an insanely productive week 1 and then just fading into obscurity. So just be warned. I do have one overreaction that's kind of interesting.
What's that?
I think the Bills need to run out and go buy a quarterback right now. Just use one of the firsts that they've accumulated and go buy, go snag one from the Rams or something. Get him an old quarterback and just try to, win his entry back. Just take that division.
That would be fun to see a third team throw their hat in the ring in the division, especially since both he and Pats are 1-1. And, I mean, Pats did show that the Jets are catchable in that division. So, like we said, more competition is definitely more fun. I wanted to double check because I think the Bills, so they just made that trade, and we'll talk about trades a little bit later, to pick up the Raiders first. So I want to double check the first he has for next year. If I remember correctly, they're kind of intriguing. He has the Pats first, he has the Bills first, he has the Commanders first, and he has the Raiders first. So the Commanders looks like it's destined to be a playoff team. Mm-hmm. But the other 3 could very well be on the outside looking in. So I get the desire to make his team as bad as possible to maximize his pick in that. But at the same time,
yeah, I just
teams just lean into it.
This my thought process is, so you got 30 points out of your 2 rookies that you didn't expect a whole lot out of on offense. You got some respectable production scattered around elsewhere. This is a new league year. Not everybody's scoring 10 points a game, so we have to game plan that. If he goes out and he uses the Commanders first, and he goes, let's call it Matt Stafford. So he goes and buys Matt Stafford. That gives him another 20 points a game on average, give or take. Uses some of those late round picks to grab some inflated guys. He's still holding on to every single young guy that he picked up. He is doing it early enough to come trade deadline when he, becomes active again. And realizes that he's a game under 500, he can fire sell everything and get back basically what he paid for it. And it's not costing him really any of the firsts. Now, a lot of this does take a lot of legwork and finding the right partners to buy some overpriced veterans. But there are definitely some of those in this league. And just snagging a quarterback wouldn't be a bad idea you wanted to take a step in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, my hot take last week with Bill was that the Bills was going to be a very interesting deadline team. That would definitely keep him in that category of could be a buyer, could be a seller. From the overreaction side of it, though, I'm concerned we're overreacting to the Dylan Sampson and Tyler Warren week on offense. Outside of those guys, nobody else scoring double digits on offense for the team.
Yeah, exactly. That's the overreaction. You got 30 points from your rookies. Go buy a quarterback.
Right. And then Demetrius Knight having 15.4 on defense. I mean, he was really showing out for Cincinnati this week. It's a question of, is that really reliable long term? Probably not. But again, he seems to be ahead of where we were expecting. And someone that's like Nick Martin, I was expecting to factor into the rotation at linebacker for San Francisco, especially now with Warner getting banged up during the game. I guess he came back and was able to continue playing. But Martin's going to start getting more show there as the season goes on. There's opportunity here. If nothing else, like I said, this could be a really fun seller team. You've got two safeties at about 20 points. One of them very inexpensive from a contract perspective right now. So there's pieces. And the AFC, like we said, feels more like a buyers and sellers are a little bit more delineated, and getting to the 7 is going to be a little bit easier than the NFC. But, people just need to lean into that. So let's see. What else are we thinking about here? So, all right. If you're the Ravens, you're 0-2, you scored less than 200 points in your division. You're likely going to go 0-3 to start this. Sam Darnold's your quarterback. He did not look good on Sunday. Is it time for one of these AFC North teams to enter the tank?
Yes, I do believe so. Though he has a lot of desirable assets, they are starting to age or just starting to work themselves out of roles. So I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to just start breaking down the team. Specifically, we're talking about Ravens. And I'm not saying just tear it all down, but move off of Tyreek. Just hold on to DJ Moore. He's pretty young. You can hold on to him for another year or two. Get rid of Tony Pollard while people are, still behind him. David Njoku's getting kind of old, right? Yeah, he's 29. Get rid of him. We still have Cole Kmet.
Yeah, I may be out of my depth here in terms of references, but you've seen the movie Trading Places, right?
Mm-hmm.
That scene in Trading Places where you've got Dan Aykroyd, you've got Eddie Murphy on the floor of the stock exchange, and at one point they are, short selling the frozen concentrated orange juice market, and then they're buying them back. It's one of those things that if Raven puts up his finger and says selling, he's going to have 10 offers in his inbox for Algier, for Dowdle, for Gainwell, for Mason, for Pollard, for Reek, for DJ Moore, for Tim Patrick, for Dontavion Wicks, for Kmet, for Njoku. I think I just rattled off 10 different names that he can get assets for. And he doesn't control his first, so it's not a full tank that makes sense for him to go into. Or even Sam Darnold. Tough week to start, but he's still a starting quarterback in this league. All of this points to it can be a reload instead of a rebuild. But again, you got to strike while the iron's hot on this, because what people are willing to give up in exchange is going to be much different in 2 weeks than it is right now.
Completely agree. He has the type of assets that over the course of a season can go from preseason worth a first round pick to by the end of the season they're all worth a third. So like and that's not to put people off of buying things, just they are, these 28-year-old players, especially like some of the running backs, like this is probably going to be the last bit of production, and then we will perpetually be talking about them as they age out of the NFL. And if he doesn't act by the time next year comes around, his team will be almost nothing. Where just acquiring 75% of what you could have got in the preseason is a fine accumulation.
Yeah, and I think
and even some things have gone up. Gainwell and Mason have probably gone up more in value than let's say Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle have diminished in value.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I think there's definitely some players that really are going to benefit from being on prime time, and Jordan Mason's one of those. I think anyone who was watching the game last night, he only scored in terms of fantasy points 8.2 points, but the impact he was having on that game, like they couldn't do shit. And then all of a sudden they started leaning on Mason and the running game, and Mason started breaking a few runs and longer runs, and all of a sudden everything opened up. So the takeaway from that is, hey, we need to, Jones and Mason are going to be a timeshare, but I would not be shocked if Mason gets to start this next week with Jones in more of that spell role, because Jones seemed to do best when he was able to be kind of change of pace or passing down back. He still obviously has the oomph to be able to run some people over, but let Mason do a lot of that work to start, do the play action, everything off of that, and let Jones excel in the areas he can excel in. I think, the change from a 4 preseason game and consistent cut downs of a roster that we used to have to now the 2 preseason games, and you don't have to cut down to the end, really is showing itself in terms of what we're seeing in the first week of football. Because a lot of the first half of a lot of games was what we should have seen in the preseason, but we had to wait until week 1 because the NFL wants to make more money.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we get a lot of these strange stat lines. A lot of players scoring under 10 points because the first game, a lot of backups or a lot of secondary options. They are still getting a look. They're still getting a couple of drives for themselves, like instead of the starter. So it's been quite interesting. I know on the defensive side of the ball, it's been just as strange. With defenses, basically, I think half of the like on-field play callers, like whoever has the green dot, I bet you half of those change compared to next week because like the coordinators just aren't quite sure who's going to be the guy for them.
True. All right. Any other over-under reactions you want to hit, or should we move to trades?
No, let's go to trades. We haven't talked about those in a while.
That's true. I'll go ahead and pick it up from, I guess, last week around podcast time. I think I did Wednesday of last week, so I think we'll go from Thursday. So 9 trades that have happened in the week. Chiefs giving up Mac Hollins and J.J. Pex for a 3rd-round pick for the Rams. Rams trying to pick up a few point scorers on the cheap. Didn't turn out so well, I don't think, for Mac. This last week, picking up a 1.3. And then, Pegs didn't play at all. So, I get it, trying to find points on the cheap, but that's always tough. Then Saturday, Pats woke up feeling dangerous. Comes to me, dumps the Kirk Cousins contract, the Tyrod Taylor contract, Chauncey Golston, and Jake Hummel, along with the 49ers first in 26 and his first in 27 to pick up Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, Tyler Shaw, Tutu Atwell, Hassan Reddick, Demario Davis, the Seahawks second in 27, and the Patriots Patriots third in 27. The way I saw this was it was, 5 nickels for a quarter type of trade. And, I think that Niners first is going to be the most valuable piece in here. But tell you what, I think Pats picked up at least 60 points. It felt like 60 points. It may have only been like 40 or 50 just from this trade in this past week. And we'll likely continue to benefit from that. Did I lose you, RJ? Okay. I'm just going to take that as you agree with me. But like I said, Pats wasn't done. Flipping Brian Branch and the Raiders 26 first, along with the third he just got back of his own, to the Giants for Gunnar Helm, Myles Garrett, and Tyke Smith. Picking up even more points, Myles Garrett is sort of a premium defensive end or edge rusher. Brian Branch was one of the biggest names at safety, young on his rookie contract, so definitely a important piece that went out, but he's got almost double the points out of Tyke Smith and what came back. So not a bad price to pay for Myles Garrett. Likely that Raiders pick is going to be in the teens, paying the teens first and a third for the pass rushing production and consistency that Garrett provides. Not a bad deal, especially considering I think a lot of folks want, 2 firsts or even more for a player of that caliber.
Yeah, I agree. It was a decent price for Garrett. I mean, I don't know. I think I'd pay a first and a third just to have his production from last week.
Yeah, it was. I do enjoy the NFL memes and the stunt play where Garrett comes in on the stunt unblocked on Joe Burrow. Look, I obviously am not a brave enough man to play professional football because I don't, and I, don't want to die. But I got to say, if I'm Joe Burrow and I'm seeing Myles Garrett barreling down on me unblocked like he was, I might ask for my brown pants.
Yeah. Very understandable.
All right. So Chiefs then going shopping on the cheap, giving up Isaiah Davis to the Giants for the third he just got from the Patriots, and then picking up AJ Epinesa from the Falcons for the Commanders 26th third and the Falcons 26th fourth. So Falcons starting to slowly but surely dip their toe into the fire sale market, but cheap moves by Chiefs. It's what they love to do.
Yeah. I think that was a solid return for Isaiah Davis. He's a running back 3 in New York, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's solid because they get all of them at least some amount of touches. But it makes sure, like for Giants especially, like now if anything crazy happens with Hall, he has the rest of the backfield. So I think that was a fine pickup and a good value for Chiefs to just recoup that third.
Yep. And then really savvy move, I'd say, by Pats. Stone Smart, Jalen Harrell, Monteric Brown, and the Seahawks second for Teddy Buchanan, Riley Moss, and the Titans fourth. Buchanan splitting snaps with Simpson in that middle linebacker role for Baltimore. So he's definitely picking up a good number of snaps. And I mean, considering Simpson got benched last year, there's every possibility he ends up taking that role full time. So giving a late second to pick up the linebacker right next to Roquan Smith in the Baltimore defense is a nice win by itself. But then Riley Moss on top of it is good value. And I don't know what Buchanan got drafted for, but getting a second locked in for that, especially for a team who's not trying to score points this year, isn't necessarily a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's solid.
And then Jalen Harrell was looks like kind of a dump, but picked up 5 points. So he's an asset the Titans should be able to flip. And then Monteric Brown looks like did not play this week. So that was probably just kind of a salary dump. So again, it's fun to see these teams really make the right trades with each other. And again, this is, these last couple trades are within the hour of kickoff. So it's, fun to see the last minute tweaks here too. Titans then swapping with me. I moved my starting quarterbacks in another trade. So in an effort to pick up a starter on the cheap, traded Isaiah Bond and the Chiefs 27 second for Russell Wilson and the Rams 26 third. Look, I didn't realize that Russ was going to be as bad as he was on Sunday. I was thinking that maybe Russ gets me through the first 4 weeks, and then Dart takes over after the bye week. I think it's week 5 or week 6 that is where most people have been targeting Dart taking the start. That being said, Wilson was just plain terrible on Sunday this week. So if he doesn't bounce back in week 2, this could be a very one-sided trade in terms of Titans getting out at the right time. But, I'm not willing to completely go full tank on the season. I want to score some points. I want to have some upsets, and that's why I made the deal. But right now it's looking like a great deal by Titans.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I think Wilson has a little bit longer of a leash. I think they definitely do view Dart as a project. So I think you're probably going to be safe throughout the rest of the season, or pretty close, at least until they're mathematically out of the playoffs. So I think it's a fine trade. I just think it was bad outcome this week.
Yeah, it's a really weird situation real life Giants is in. And this happens, I feel like, every once in a while. And it's always really difficult to figure out how this plays out going forward. Hey, we're probably coaching for our jobs this year, but we took the rookie quarterback because that's our long-term guy that we want to build with, but we may not get to use him if we lose our jobs. So it's one of those where at what point does he even possibly become the best option in New York to get the starts? Or is that purely once they're fired, whoever comes in says, okay, now it's time to start Dart? Again, it's always that really weird dynamic of coach on the hot seat takes a highly regarded rookie quarterback in the first round to save his job or develop if he's able to maintain it. But to play well enough to maintain his job, the rookie's probably not playing. But again, if he switches to the rookie, it could cost him his job. So it's always fun to see that kind of dynamic kick in. All right. Giants flipping the newly acquired first rounder for the Raiders, along with Luke McCaffrey and Cam McGrone, to the Bills for Michael Wilson, Alex Singleton, and Quay Walker. Giants really looking to beef up their linebacking core before this week started. So takes the first he acquires in the deal to move Myles Garrett and immediately spends it on a couple linebackers.
I mean, it's a good pickup by Giants. I think if Bills would have made an effort to break all of this stuff down, he probably gets a little bit better than just one first. Because I think he gets really close with Quay and let's call it Michael Wilson as it is. And I think Alex Singleton is worth more than just a 4th round pick and some, random guys. I don't value Luke McCaffrey very high, and I don't think he should have been valued very high, like necessarily in this trade. So McCaffrey in a 4th for Alex Singleton doesn't necessarily feel great. But yeah, that Raiders pick is probably going to be pretty decent. So if it ends up being really good, then this is a solid win for the Bills. But as of right now, I think the Giants have the edge in this trade.
Yeah, it's tough to and where chaining of deals together becomes an interesting exercise of if you look at it as Myles Garrett for these two linebackers um, and Michael Wilson. Like, is that what you would you give Myles Garrett for those three pieces? And I'm not so sure I would, but at the same time, it's what his team needs considering where his strength is and where he needs to round things out. So again, I see your point. I think both those linebackers, if between those three pieces they score 400 points for him this year, then it's definitely worth it. And that's definitely in the range of outcomes. But yeah.
I think this is just this one does is a great example of how players value diminishes after their rookie contract, regardless of it being a good or market contract. Because what was Quay Walker a year ago? He was like $1 million contract, right?
I think so,
Maybe
yeah.
2 years. Yeah, but unquestionably one of the most expensive, like value wise defensive players in our league. And now at this point, he is one of multiple pieces that ultimately results in a first round pick. So I just think it's interesting how, especially on the defensive side of it, there's such a small window to really capitalize on their peak value.
Yeah, I'd agree. And then last but certainly not least, right as the games were starting, I will clarify that this process at 101, the trade was accepted before 1 o'clock. It was just a matter of, as a commissioner, I was a little bit slow in terms of approving it. But right before the game started, Devin Culp and a third getting moved for Casey Washington and a fourth. I think this ended up being kind of a net nothing in terms of production in week one, although Casey Washington had 6.3 on 6 targets. Wow, good for him.
No, I think this is a solid win for Panthers. I mean, I don't know if giving up a third and downgrading to a fourth and picking up the third, debatably the fourth wide receiver in the pecking order, is ideally what you want to do. But if the 6 targets is something that happens, continuously this season, then this is a home run.
Yeah, I mean, picking up 100 targets for a third to fourth downgrade.
Right.
How old is Washington? 24-year-old? Yeah, you do that almost every time.
Which, with Atlanta, we have, we have historical data of, Ray McLeod, for example, Darnell Mooney. These guys that were, a decent gadget type of guys elsewhere, just by necessity end up being 80 targets a year, 100 targets a year. So, I mean,
No
it could end up being, yeah.
All right. So the first time in a while getting through some trades. So really fun week one. We're coming into week 2 here, another doubleheader. The third of the 3 division games to kick off will be one of the games, and the other game will be getting into your divisions. I think it's cross conference, not alter conference person right now, but really starting to get into the main chunk of the schedule. So we'll see some teams probably separate. I don't think we're going to see 4-0 teams. I think we'll see some come back to the pack, and we'll see some one-on-one teams that had unexpected results move up or down. But God, it would be just really fun if the NFC keeps things tight the way they did with so many teams sort of at that middle of the pack. But any hot takes or major predictions you want to leave us with for the NFC in this week, RJ?
Or no, none that I would be confident in.
Well, that's never exactly stopped us before. So, all right. Well, like I said, we're trying to get back in that every week cadence. So here we are at it again. Always love for folks to join us, but I always don't mind talking with RJ on a Tuesday night. RJ, thanks for taking the time to join here, and keep it active, guys. We're back covering trades again, so you make the deal. Who knows? Maybe we'll either do an emergency podcast or really spend a large chunk talking about the genius that is you.